it did its job. I mean, nothing to call home about, but it did gain life. Over here, I go with the wolf because I really can't find anything else to really catches my attention. Third pack, I definitely go for the 7/6 for 6 mana. And over here, I'm looking at New Horizons, but I go with a Beacon. Vivian's Greasely is my next choice. Think about going into white, it's pretty open. Here, you know what? I'm not really sure what to take. So, but I end up going with Goblin Assault Team. Maybe some red in there. Maybe some black. I end up cutting the black. Second one, I've got the Blast Zone or the Parter of Veils. So I go with the Narset. Here I'm not sure what to take. We take the Turret Ogre. Biosense Hydra seemed nice at that point, but honestly, I didn't have enough blue to go into blue. I do try and pick a few things in blue, but it just wasn't enough. So I ended up with the red-green build that you'll see. More Turret Ogres. I look at Gideon's Triumph. I go for the Crouch Wrangler. Over here, not sure what to take, so I just end up going with the Goblin Assault Team, I think. Cyclops, the Big Trampler, Mind Blast. I take the Neo form, because maybe I'm thinking about going into blue. The Big Fish, Cat goes straight into sideboard, and I get the Vivian, Champion of the Wilds. So that's my third Planeswalker that I will use. Here I take a little bit of ramp, and I just end up going for the fourth Planeswalker, Vraska. She did not dazzle me. I mean, I really didn't have any much Death Touch in the deck. Storm the Citadel did save me a couple of times, and that was pretty good. But then I take the Bonds of Flourishing instead of the 8 thing. Here, nothing in green, nothing really good in red. So I end up taking something, the Dovin's Veto. Another Interplanar Beacon. Encouraging Crisis. It was okay. Premonition. And so as I told you, I end up going with this red-green build. Pretty aggressive. When played correctly, it did win me most of the matches. I mean, there were a couple of times I should have mulliganed, but I did not. And that lost me the matches, or I made some mistakes playing. Um, there are a lot of things to work on in my drafting, I know that. But I'm pretty happy with the way the games went. Well, I will let you take a look at the games and tell me in the comments, what do you think? What should I have done better or worse? Okay, so we begin our games. And our first opponent is running a red-white deck, if I remember correctly. I play first. I've got a bit of ramp. I've got big creatures. And yeah, he's playing some sort of red-white kind of flyers deck and whatnot. He does have a lot of spot removal, damage based, of course, and that was kind of annoying at the beginning. But we got around it, and everything went fine afterwards. He does get rid of our first few threats, but then we just stabilize, as you'll see over here. Uh, Vraska, as I told you, it wasn't amazing. She wasn't amazing. She was pretty much okay, but I'll take her. I mean, he did make the mistake of allowing our Death Touchers through. He knew I was playing a lot of big creatures. The Turret Ogres have reach, and we continue making those Death Touch hits. And of course, the Hexproof Crocodiles come in. I lose my Vraska, but then I get another. I put down another Crocodile, and I go for Storm the Citadel. I'm not sure about that attack I just made, but it, things that kind of happen in game. Here I give my creatures trample, and he just concedes right there with one life left. On to game two. I think about putting in the blue, but it just wasn't worth it. So I continue with the red in there. There were a couple of times I played around. I thought about putting in the blue cards, but there just wasn't enough of them. Nothing really that stood out for me to do so. Vivian Champion of the Wilds will come in pretty soon. I debate whether going in for Kiora or Vivian. Our opponent is very, very aggressive at this point. Nothing we can do to stop him. And I just concede that game. On to game three. Game three, if I'm not mistaken, he gets mana screwed. And I'm able to just run wild with that game. So I've got my little bit of ramp. 5 lands. And as you can, well, he wasn't really. Was it mana screw or was it flooded? Was he flooded? Really can't remember. Or he just gave up. So I gave them trample. Yep, here it comes, the concession. And that was it for game three, match one. So one win onto game two. We are playing Doga 10. And Doga 10 catches me with my guard down. Another white red build. I go with the Crunch Wrangler, turn 2. Nothing on turn 3. But I will go for something on turn 4. I will go for the Goblin Assault team. Here he sets himself up so that both of his creatures can attack next turn. And I go in for an attack, hoping for a trade. He thinks about it, thinks about it, thinks about it, and he goes for it. I'm not sure if I won or lost at that point, but I did it. Over here he's got combat tricks. This guy did a pretty good job of using his combat tricks. properly. And I bring down Samut, but he's got nothing to pump, nothing to do. So it wasn't my brightest idea at that point. I think I should have gone for the big worm and then Samut. This wasn't my best match by a long shot, and pretty soon he's gonna go and start caving in my head. Next up, he uses a little bit of removal, if I'm not mistaken, in order to get rid of a few of my things. See, Wanderer's Strike. And here comes the worm, but I think it's too little too late. His things are flying over mine, and that's the end of it. So I get ready for game 2. Now I think about any sideboard cards, but nothing calls my attention once again. And I mulligan incorrectly. I do not read the situation. I should have kept a hand with green, with forests, but see, all I get is mountains. And that was pretty much the death of me. Samut does nothing, Kiora does nothing. Since I can't get a single creature down, he's just so ahead on the board state that I just concede. So on to game 3. Got 1 win, 1 loss. And in game 3, I play against Red Dwarf. So I play first. I keep a decent hand, in my opinion. It's got a little bit of ramp, or the possibility of ramp. And it's got a Crunch Wrangler. I go with the Wrangler, and next turn I go with the Bond of Flourishing, grab myself another forest, because I do need double green at some point. Goblin Assault Team, I make a questionable attack. However, I do not get punished for it. I could have lost my Wrangler there. I do get a bit greedy with this turn. I go in for an all-out attack and get blown out of the water because he blocks one of the goblins, blocks the Wrangler, gives the creature first strike, and then just prison realms my other goblin that had the counter. Next up, I go for the Turret Ogre for no value. Turret Ogre is blocked by the bird. Kiora comes down, and as well a little bit more ramp. My opponent's bird goes in for Kiora and knocks her down a notch. He does not attack with the other creature because he knows I'm going to double block. So next up, I go with the Cyclops and draw from Kiora. I mean, that's the main thing from Kiora. You draw from her. Over here, I need an extra land. So I draw one from Kiora, and 2 mana open. My opponent doesn't know that I can't do anything with it, but hey, it looks good on paper. I decide to go for the Death Touchers to stop that 5/5. Since it doesn't have trample, it does not matter to me. So I started making Death Touchers, start dropping in a couple of other creatures, and here I'm thinking about the long game. I'm thinking about uh, doing lots of things, but my opponent just decided um, to concede. So over here, I try and see what would happen if I started putting in the blue cards, and I go through all the motions. Everything looks good, kind of. Yes, no. I need to put in a charmed strafe for that to work. And last minute, I just think to myself, this is stupid. Take them all out. Put in my red cards again. Fix the mana base and go into the second part of the match. Over here, I think that this is a good keep because of Vivian, and I'm thinking to myself, she can find me more creatures, she can find me other stuff to do, but my opponent had other plans for me. He comes out of the gates pretty much swinging, drops a couple of creatures. I drop with the wolf. The wolf becomes no match for his combat tricks, and here I try to block the thing that might get bigger, but he just gives it +1/+1 counter and first strike, and lifelink and whatnot. So things are starting to get out of hand for me. I mean, most of my creatures are in the 4 and 5 range. His creatures are in the 1, 2, 3 range, mana cost wise. So of course I continue playing, try and get Vivian Reed down, see what I can do with her. I only reveal lands, not a single creature that I can put into exile to cast later. I do make a mistake there. I should have put Kiora down first and then Vivian Reed in order to in a way just make sure things are a little bit more chill. Vivian doesn't wouldn't probably wouldn't have died off that quickly. I put down the worm and hope for the best here, but my opponent is very far ahead. He's got a flyer that just starts pecking away, and that will eventually kill me off. Kiora comes down, I untap a land, put down my the Tusk guy that gives trample, but it's not good enough. Here he goes in for the attack, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if it's this turn or next turn that he just kills me off. Makes it so my guy can't block, but I'm pretty much dead anyways. There we go. So game 3, decide not to put anything in or out because that's just the way it is. I go first. I play first. I've got a nice 1, 2, 3 curve. 1, 2, 3, 4 now. I need an extra land. He's got the Enforcer. The Enforcer will slow me down a lot, but nothing that I can't handle at this point. Here I go with the Turret Ogre, or no, I go with the Goblin Hooligans, or whatever they're called, for extra damage. Here's the Turret Ogre, puts him down to 5. He cannot block enough for me not to win. Next turn, as I told you, the Law Enforcer is able to stop my attackers, but he was a bit mana screwed. I had everything I needed, and I just went with it. And there's the concession. Okay, so our next match is quite interesting. It's a bit short though. I end up playing against No Warning. And this looks like a good hand. Start off with the Forest, go on with the Wrangler. Turn 3, nothing. Our opponent seems to be mana screwed. I put down Samut or Samit, I'm not sure how to pronounce him. Give my creature trample and +2/+1, and our opponent gives up from game 1. Then we move on to the second game, and this one is a bit longer. So he starts off. I choose to keep. I begin off with my forest as always, and then go on with Vivian's Grizzly. He's got nothing by turn 3, and Kiora comes down. I'm waiting for another land, but next turn I'll be able to add 3 mana, untap, and bring down the Goblin Assault team. They go in for 4. I'm not sure why I didn't attack with the Grizzly. We're trading back and forth. The third Ogre, bring him down to 14. I then attack and bring him down to 8. He comes back up with one of those, what should we call them, giants. And I'm not sure whether to attack in, so I don't do it. He's he's gained so much life from that giant. I decide to stay back on defense. Try to block the giant when he attacks. But it just doesn't go that well for me because he's got the Divine Arrow. As you see, I block with everything. He goes for Divine Arrow. Kills off both my guys. Put the counter on the Grizzly. I go in for an attack with the Grizzly and for 2 points of damage with the Turret Ogre. He does not block. So I think we're doing fine. I ambush his giant with everything I have. He does not block well and just gives up because it seems like he messed up with the blocks. And that was the match. The next match was very interesting against an opponent called Kavandil. It was a 3-game match. In game 1, I've got a pretty decent hand. I've got ramp, I've got creatures, I've got Kiora, everything you would want. I try and ramp up, and he plays this spider. I should have attacked in here, but I decided to play Kiora and not attack. Maybe that was mistake number 1. He starts growing his spider with the New Horizons. I attack in and decide to play the ogre instead of the crocodile. Now that was a mistake because now he does grow his spider up to a 5/5 and the ogre just does not cut it against the 5/5. Here I put down my crocodile and he trades his druid for my druid. he puts down the Griffin and goes on defense because he's getting pretty low. I decide to make a very foolish attack, lose both my creatures. His spider's still alive, still a 5/5. Here he amasses and puts down another smaller spider. I decide to go for the turret ogre. He loses 2 points. I attack. He lets it through because he probably knows that next turn, this turn he's gaining life. He gains life, goes back up to 10. I'm on the back pedal. I decide not to attack, even though my creatures have trample, and I pulled off another land off the top. Wasn't really able to do anything. He exiles a creature that proliferates, and he starts becoming very aggressive with his spider. That's a 6/6. Maybe I should have used both my creatures to block. I decide to take the 6 points of damage. Samut doesn't do much. I scry a Wrangler to the bottom, but it just Samut wasn't enough. I let him go here. I think maybe I should have just gotten rid of his spider, and then he puts in the 10/10. I think to myself, okay, I can make him not block, and I'm gonna have one blocker for the 10/10. So I go in for a strike, take care of one of his creatures. He's down to 5, kills off my only blocker, and that's how I die. Now going on to game 2. This was definitely much better for me. It went in my favor. So I decide to play first. I've got ramp, I've got creatures. Missing the planeswalker, but I think to myself, hey, this looks good enough. Vivian comes around. She decides to join the party, but I go for the Goblin Assault team. Then the turn after that, I go for the ogre, and here I put, if I'm not mistaken, I put down the Vivian. Give my Goblin team first strike and counters so I can proliferate. I put him down to 1, and he just gives up. And then finally we go into the third match. My opponent begins. Once I get a look at my opening hand, I see that this is not going to cut it. Too many 4-drops. I decide to go for the land heavy hand. Get a Bond of Flourishing, and I'm able to take a Wrangler. Wrangler comes down turn 3, and that means that turn 4 he'll start growing. My opponent just doesn't put anything down. Goblin Assault Team and Wrangler go in. He goes in for an exile of my team, so I don't get the counter. And my Wrangler is just doing a lot of work here. He's already brought down my opponent at least 7 points. So here is where I put down Vraska. After I attack, Vraska puts down the assassin. And pretty much it's my game from here on. There's nothing my opponent can do. Plays New Horizons, puts some counters, puts in another blocker. However, I give my creatures a bump, and that was the end of it. And our final match of the night. This was the waiting match. Played against Robin, had to wait a lot. I decided to take a mulligan and then keep with Bond of Flourishing on top. Second turn, I put down the Wrangler. That little soldier guy that my opponent had was giving me, or enforcer was giving me so much pain during the whole game. But anyways, so back to this exact game. I go for Bond of Flourishing, get the Goblin Assault team since I'm gonna have 4 lands, and we'll probably get one in my next couple of draw steps. The opponent decides to go in with the Pegasus and has the makeshift battalion to follow him up. I decide to go in for the Goblin Assault team, and now my creatures are trading, but I only go in with the Goblin Assault team. I was scared of the makeshift battalion, but he gives him flying, can't do anything about him. Here I go for another Goblin Assault team. All my creatures have 4 power, and I decide to swing in, see if we can catch up in the damage race. My opponent sacrifices his enforcer, but gives him first strike. I put the counter on the other Goblin Assault team, thanks to my opponent's first strike creature. Bring him down to 13, and this becomes a damage race. Opponent is thinking about it, stays on defense. I decide to go for the worm. Wrangler grows as always, and I decide to go for no attacks. My opponent plays, puts down his island, plays nothing, just passes his turn. I go for the Vraska here in order to put in my Death Touchers. The Death Touchers do seem to deter the opponent. No attacks on that turn or on this turn of my opponent. He does bring out the Wanderer, exiles a permanent I own. With power 4 or greater. So he goes for the worm. I decide this Wanderer is really gonna give me hard times. I go for a Cyclops. That makes a creature not be able to block if I pay 5, I think it was. And my opponent is looking at the situation, he's studying it hard. I decide to attack his Wanderer on my turn. Since I don't want that guy around, he's just very annoying. If he gets many more counters, loyalty counters, he will be able to exile things from the battlefield. The Law Rune Enforcer is the only one left. He brings in down another one. Has one more card in hand. I'm not sure what it can be. But I go for the Ogre, bring him down to 11. And my opponent just gives up. So game 2, I just go straight into it. My opponent takes his time. It looks like he was actually sideboarding, or at least thinking about it really hard. And after almost a minute, I think, I am given the opportunity to play my game 2. So a little bit above a minute and running on the clock. My opponent's still thinking. And this is where we go into game 2. Now, game 2 is a pretty long game. There's a lot of back and forth. I do not like this all lands hand. I go in for a mulligan and scry the land to the bottom. And well, I will let you enjoy the end of this game on your own.